The candidates have figured out how to manipulate this system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm disheartened that our initiative structure is such that we become the guinea pigs for all these disastrous ideas.
Yeah. And I am really glad that our senior citizens in the community figured it out, that this was a bait switch.
Right.
So they're not actually telling the truth about what this is going to do to our elections.
There's manipulation.
Yeah, a lot of it.
And if we have a community that is asking very good and smart questions about our current election model, it's still a little bit confused, why would we change that?
Well, welcome everybody. My name is Weldon Shaver, and we are here for the July issue of the Policy Pulse podcast. And I am joined with Clarissa Thomas, who's with PPAR, and also Steve Schleiker, who's the El Paso County Clerk and Recorder. So we hope to have a lively discussion today about what we discussed in our meeting, which Steve was able to attend earlier this month, and give us some good information about what's going on at the county, some ballot issues that might be coming up, and some things that's on his radar. So welcome. Thanks
Absolutely.
for joining us.
Thanks for the invite, guys.
Yeah. So, Doc, take it away.
Yeah, so Steve was gracious enough to come and visit with us. And obviously, our topic of the month was a discussion on elections and all things related to the biggest chunk. I mean, not that DMV is not a big chunk of what you guys oversee, but the elections process, because it is 2024. It's an election year. And that is obviously front and center for us right now. And for our realtor members, there are so many issues that are going to come. I mean, not only the realtor members, but for the consumers, there's going to be so many issues coming down the pike that I think it would be good for us and beneficial to share your knowledge and what you see coming and why our voters need to be concerned with some of the things that will be presented to them at the ballot and how long the ballot is going to be, because they might have ballot drowsiness or ballot hypnosis, however we want to call it.
Fatigue.
Ballot fatigue is definitely going to be it. So we just want to share that with our realtor member and our consumers that, brace yourselves. And when those ballot drops, take it away, Steve, and tell us what they can expect and why we asked you to come in and talk to us about ranked choice voting and give them the tidbits of what ranked choice voting is, because it's a mouthful and it's a very complex issue that everyone should be concerned about or educated about if you're not concerned and you're happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Clarissa, thank you. I mean, there are some concerns that I have. One of which is we are going to be probably looking at a very lengthy ballot. It's estimated right now here in El Paso County, and also many of our metro counties throughout Colorado are probably looking at a 3-card ballot. And that is significant because we're talking about folks that are running for elected office, if it's, United States president, if it's our House district representatives, district attorney, and all of the different initiatives that they're trying to get on the ballot now. And many of us that when we visit King Soopers or Safeway or Walmart, we're all being hounded to sign these different petitions on these different initiatives. So the timeline to submit those to the Secretary of State is coming up. The concern that I have is when you're talking about a 3-card ballot, as you alluded to, is you're definitely going to see ballot fatigue. And you're going to see a lot of undervotes where folks are like, you know what, I'm only concentrating on this particular race or, on this particular individual or item if it's from the city of Colorado Springs. That is a huge concern. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to try to get out there and just to educate the community how much a vote counts. Right. Because I know you guys know we just got the results back from House District 58 where that individual just won by 3 votes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it went into a recount. And, we as citizens, when, you hear, well, my vote really doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Yeah. And a lot. I mean, there's, stories where Thomas Jefferson, the only reason he became president, he won by 1 vote. And so, it was the House of Representatives at that time. And he just basically, it was a split house and he got it by 1 vote. So everybody's voice does matter. There are a lot of initiatives, guys, and I knew it was coming down. I knew that they were going to be tackling property tax. There's a lot of confusion with that. I knew they would be tackling elections. There's a lot of confusion with that. But one of the things when I came and spoke to you guys is ranked choice voting. And this is really confusing to a lot of our citizens. They're like, hey, we already have this model. And, we have read or heard that Colorado is the model for many of the states throughout the country that are trying to copy. Well, here is what they want to do is get rid of what we have been accustomed to, completely dismantle the election system, and go to ranked choice voting. What that basically does, it really gets rid of your major party primaries. So basically with your assemblies and going into the primaries is your Democrat Party and Republican Party would no longer have assemblies where those registered Democrats or Republicans pick that candidate to move on to the primary ballot. So that would be completely gone. So what it really turns into is a jungle primary where you can have 20, 30, 40 candidates where you have no idea what their party affiliation is on a single ballot running for a particular office. And you as a voter would have to rank them by your choice. And I am sitting here going, this is not a really good idea because I actually see it as your clerk and recorder when we're voting on school district members and your ballot says, please vote for 3. And folks are like, I have no idea who this person is. I'm not voting for them. So they may vote 1 or 2, but it's a lot of undervotes. I foresee the same thing happening. Historically, ranked choice voting has been incorporated in some municipalities and some states, but over 85% of those municipalities and states that have incorporated it have now repealed it. Right. So to me, I'm like, guys, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just basically take a look at what other states, your municipalities have done, do a little study of going, okay, why did you get rid of it? And what it has shown is voter turnout drops dramatically because folks are like, you know what? I don't know who these people are. Are they a Republican? Are they a Democrat? Are they a minor party? What do they stand for? I don't have the time to do the research on these individuals. Just a number of different things. The other thing that I don't like about it is you have to go through a process once you get to the final ballot. So we're now beyond the primary and we're going into the general election, is if a candidate does not meet the 50% mark, then they start reorganizing the votes at the bottom and they will look at a voter going, okay, this voter voted this candidate number 2. So we're going to take that vote and move it up to this candidate. So there's manipulation. There's a lot of manipulation. And so I am sitting here going, how do you audit that? If a candidate wants a recount, how do you go about doing that? The other thing that's a concern to me is in this initiative, there is nothing in there in regards to a write-in candidate, where a write-in has a right to sit there and basically submit that paperwork to the Secretary of State. But there's nothing in ranked choice voting that would sit there and allow at this time for a write-in candidate. Very confusing. Low voter turnout. And the terms that are being used that I don't like as clerk and recorder is anytime when you're talking elections and you use the term manipulation and you cannot audit, I want nothing to do with it.
Right.
Our current system is we basically have a risk limiting audit. We have a logic and accuracy test. We have election night reporting, and there's audits that are done with that. Going to ranked choice voting, all that is gone. So everything that we have invested in, everything we have developed over the last 12, 13 years is going to be completely gone. So now the state is asking to get rid of this system, replace it with this, but they have no way to audit it. They have no way to sit there. None of those processes are in place. And the other thing is, many of us are going, okay, how much is this going to cost the taxpayer? And it's estimated it's going to cost the state over $20 million to do this because our vendors right now cannot do this. So to me, I am definitely not in favor of ranked choice voting. I firmly believe in one person, one vote, not where you vote for 4 or 5 people. Right. And, and what comes out is, the 4th person I chose actually won this whole entire thing. Yeah. So it's extremely confusing.
What I find a little bit interesting on this is that, it's obviously being sold as a very progressive, up and coming equitable type of
Yeah.
a proposal to modernize our election structure in Colorado. When ranked choice voting has been around for so many years, and those places that have, oh, and by the way, the proponents are obviously also claiming that this is going to allow people to have a more competitive voice. And if you're a Republican that doesn't like that a Democrat controls a seat, you're going to have a say in that matter. And if you're a Democrat that doesn't like, I'm like, all that, it's from somebody that, spent so many years working on election stuff. And that
Yeah.
is my background. I say it's hogwash, right? Because Colorado has always been progressive. We're one of the progressive Western states that has spent and dedicated so much time
Yep.
at putting together good, cohesive, coherent, and auditable plans for our electoral process, right? And it's always about maintaining voter integrity and one person, one vote, right?
Yep.
That's what's always been at the top of mind. And I'm saying this is of being involved with the electoral process in Colorado for 30 years. And I'm like, what am I missing here? So they're bringing this idea that's been around the block for quite some time. It's not something progressive. Yes, it's progressive for the Western progressive states like Washington, Oregon, things like that. But they're not talking about those communities that have turned the tide against it and are repealing it. They're not talking about Alaska. They're using Alaska as the standard boilerplate right now for the success of this. And I'm like, actually, Alaska is trying to revert because
Yep.
it was a disaster for the election. And I mean, I obviously always know that political policy is always, and I said political policy because this is a politically driven, motivated policy proposal to get rid of people that the folks that are proposing this don't necessarily like being in elected office. And it's part of politics.
Yep.
We can't get every single person that we like. So there's another election cycle. You vote them out of office, right? And I mean, as it is, people struggle with the longevity of ballots. And now you're
Yep.
going to have to ask them to vote and sit there and formulate a plan of attack for, okay, well, if I don't get my first choice, then I'm going to have to think about my second, third, fourth choice. And I have to be mindful that maybe my candidate is not at all going to be the winner and it's going to be some random person because at the end of the day, your one vote, one
Right.
person, one vote is totally thrown out the window.
Yeah.
And so I struggle with this whole process, and I've struggled with this notion for years. Even in my days of, fathoming to be an academic, I'm like, it's absolutely a joke.
Yeah.
It's cool for some, but it really isn't equitable and it's not competitive, and it's far from actually being a representative democratic process for us.
Yeah.
And so I'm disheartened that we continue to go down this path in Colorado where our initiative structure is such that we become the guinea pigs for all these disastrous ideas.
Yep.
Because somebody has the money to be able to circulate, the petitions, and then we end up with stuff that we really don't like, and then we can't undo because, and I say we can't undo because it's going to be a constitutional amendment should it get to that point. And so tell me how a legislative body that can't agree on anything is going to be able to undo it.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm struggling. And so I know that that's my personal bias on it, but it's like, folks, I've spent years, almost 3 decades researching elections and electoral processes and being very involved local, state, and the federal level on that sector. And it really is troublesome
Yeah.
that this
Well,
is where we
yeah.
are this year.
Yeah. And Clarissa, one of the things that you stated was equitable. And, the question that many of us should ask is, okay, how do you apply to get onto the ballot? And currently the way our system is, either you have to go through your party's assembly to get on there because it's those individuals that vote, or you can petition on. So the question then exists, okay, how do you do it for ranked choice voting? Because if you're getting rid of the assemblies and you're getting rid of that whole entire process, how do these individuals get onto the ballot?
Right.
Well, what it is you have to sit there and you go through, you petition on. And I will tell you is to petition on, that will cost an individual over $20,000 to carry and go get those signatures. So now what you're looking at is, okay, what type of candidate has that type of money
Right.
to go around and just, pay somebody to sit there and walk their petitions around to get signatures? So that is one thing you're looking at is we're really eliminating a lot of the, middle income or folks that just want to step up and serve their community, that's gone.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they have $20,000 in
No.
the bank, or they don't want to throw that on their credit card. The other thing is, the proponent of this initiative for ranked choice voting, one of the things is I'm starting to notice a trend because he's been doing a lot of initiatives here in the state of Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And I will basically share is this is a person that puts the cart before the horse.
Mm-hmm.
He is the individual that basically supported and funded the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment. And those of us that have been in the real estate community
Mm-hmm.
basically have seen since it was repealed by the voters in 2000. And, I knew, 2020 is when it was
2020,
repealed.
yeah. Mhm.
Man, I'm going way back.
Mhm.
But, I knew it was going to get repealed. And here's why is it's very confusing. And when voters don't understand it, they're like, let's just get rid of it, especially when you're talking property tax. But what we went ahead and did as voters, and what this proponent pushed, was let's get rid of the Gallagher Amendment. But my question was, what are you going to replace it with?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And still to this day, 4 years later, the legislature still has no plans to fix the property
Right.
tax,
Right.
which now we're looking at another handful of initiatives
Mm-hmm.
where they're capping property tax or they're
Right.
capping assessment rates.
Yep.
So we really opened Pandora's box. So again, the cart before the horse when it was the Gallagher Amendment and property tax. The cart before the horse, he's doing it again when you're sitting here looking at, let's get rid of our current election model
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of states are copying, and let's go ahead and get rid of it. And let's just go ahead and put this in place with no audit procedures,
Mm-hmm.
recount. I see a ton of lawsuits
Oh, yeah.
that could possibly come down from municipalities or candidates, because if a municipality per Tabor, if they want a mill levy override, they have to go to the voters.
Right.
There's just a lot of different things that are associated with this where I'm going, if we have a community that is asking very good and smart questions about our current election model and still a little bit confused, why would we change that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
go to something that's just absolutely, it's hard to explain. And that is the reason why, you see voter turnout go dramatically down.
Mm-hmm.
And as Clarissa alluded to, is in 2020, the state of Alaska did approve ranked choice voting by 1 percentage point.
Mm.
It barely passed.
Yeah.
And now they are going back after 4 years, one general election cycle, and they are going to sit there and they're looking at repealing it.
Right.
And looking at the data and everything that's coming in, it's probably going to overwhelmingly 65%.
Right.
Yeah, and the person that's at the Safeway and the King Supers that's asking you to sign that petition, I've heard them, and they say, "Hey, would you like to make it so our elections are more fair and everybody's votes gets counted?" So they're not actually telling the truth about what this is going to do to our elections, and they certainly don't talk about the costs. So, as the dad said in The Graduate to Dustin Hoffman, he says, "This idea sounds a little half-baked, son." That's kind of what it sounds like to me. It's a little half-baked.
Well,
so.
and nothing against a lot of the folks that are, gathering up those signatures,
Right.
but many of them work for companies that are out of state.
Mhm.
And they are not citizens of El Paso County or the state of Colorado. They are given boilerplate script. And that's why, if you get any questions regarding this initiative, this is what you say.
Mhm.
And so these are folks that come in from Florida. They come in from out of state,
Yeah.
and they're being paid per signature.
Yep.
So they have no vested interest whatsoever in our local community. They're
Right.
just wanting to get a signature to get paid.
Yep.
Right. I mean, and it's like, I guess in deference also, and it's not in disrespect to that industry, right, within the electoral process, the signature gatherers. I mean, it's part of our constitutional process, to allow candidates to get onto the ballot
Yep.
by means of gathering signatures. And so it's always very disingenuous,
Mm-hmm.
especially like in partisan fights, right? That people that seek to gather signatures to get onto the ballot are somehow not defenders of the Constitution. And I'm like, actually, they're exercising their constitutional abilities and
Correct.
constitutional rights to get onto the ballot. And this is why we've seen, the surgence because of the toxicity within, the grassroots partisan process. And so you've got people pushing this notion because they want to even append that process because it's become so, and it's for both Republicans and Democrats. It's become very, I don't know. I don't want to call it noisy. That's what I said. It's not in disrespect to the process. But in Colorado, you can access the ballot by going through your grassroots process, which is working your neighborhood caucuses or gathering signatures. And so then you see, this other political current of people that want to bring yet a different level because they're like, let's do away with that because it's become hogwash. And this is too much noise. And so let's open it up. But by opening it up, it's like Colorado already has an open primary, right?
Yep.
And so now it's like, forget that. And let's make it all, a wild goose chase, if I can say that. But it's a free for all. And having a free for all is not entirely the desired approach to getting on, like people to participate.
Right.
I would challenge the proponents of it to tell me, how can you guarantee and demonstrate beyond a reasonable doubt? And this is not over the course of, we haven't tested in Colorado, so I can't give you an answer. That's exactly why. And that right there should be, you know what? Then it's grounds for you not even considering it here. But show me longitudinally how this has actually increased voter turnout and how people have been satisfied by this process. Because people would not overturn something if they were so satisfied by it.
That's correct.
And so that's what I said. I welcome anybody. And I have friends, very close friends, that are part of the proponent side. And I have yet to hear them give me a good reason why we should do this in Colorado.
Yeah.
And then I struggle. I mean, and this is the other funny part of it, that when people have been questioning because of our current political divisiveness, we have folks that continue to have stomach aches and angst over how 2024 is going to play out. And then you have people that say, well, this is going to, make political processes better in Colorado. And I say, well, part of the questions and concerns of the electoral process in 2020 was giving and ensuring people that comfort that the integrity of the electoral process is upheld no matter what. We worked really hard in Colorado to make sure that we had a risk limiting audit, the ability to take out a random race and say, okay, we're going to take that and we're going to guarantee and prove beyond a reasonable doubt to the electoral segment of our population that your votes were cast in the manner that you chose to cast, as opposed to this nebulous, there was ballot stuffing, or, it was like paper ballots is the way to go because that's the only way that we could guarantee that machines are not altered. Everything that we have in place in Colorado is to guarantee that your vote goes to the person that you were wanting it to go to, and that it's going to be cast accurately and with integrity, right? And so having this and stripping out that risk limiting audit and any type of notion of guaranteeing that I'm going to be satisfied is where I continue to pause. That's why I was like, it's not that I'm not one of those believers in making electoral processes even more accessible, more fair. It's that I'm concerned that you cannot guarantee that my one person, one vote is going to be one person, one vote, because it's not. Casting votes for 4 or 5 different choices for one race, and then you're not going to be able to give me that audit afterwards. Right. And so that's where I just kind of stop and get worried.
Yeah, Clarissa, earlier I mentioned the term manipulation. And when we're sitting here talking about moving votes from a particular voter and moving them up to different candidates, if you said, hey, this is my second choice, my third choice, or my fourth choice, you're manipulating that stuff. So you're taking votes from one bucket and you're putting them to another bucket. And so to me as a voter, and everybody should also be very concerned of how do you do that? And is it accurate?
Right.
The other thing is it's been proven as well is the candidates have figured out how to manipulate this system. So when they sit there and they are going around and they're talking to voters, they'll sit there and say, hey, here's who I am. I'm running for clerk and recorder. And, folks are like, hey, you got my vote. Well, now you have candidates going, well, make me your number 2 vote. And so what they're doing is they're sitting there, they figured out that if they get enough number 2 or number 3 votes, that will push them to the top of the ticket and get about 50%. That is how they figured out the system to manipulate that. And that is how an individual in Alaska who was basically on the initial election, was ranked number 4th, ended up winning the whole entire race. Is because her campaign figured out, don't make me number 1, vote number 2 or number 3. So there's just a lot of concerns. And the other thing is, if I cannot explain it, the citizens here in El Paso County, or sit there and basically say, hey, you know what? Here's what we do for audits. I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And, as Clarissa alluded to, this is open to the public. Prior to every election, we have to do a logic and accuracy test. And a lot of folks, we do media releases, we invite the media, the public, but really no one ever shows up to it. And it's very, very important, because what that is, it's a 3-stage audit. And the Secretary of State sends down test ballots. And so they sit there and they say, hey, here are your ballots. We want you to process them. And here's what the known result is. So what happens then is we bring in our bipartisan judges, Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated. They run those ballots through our tabulation machines, and we should come to exactly what the Secretary of State outlined. That's step 1. Then, step 2 is, once we are done verifying those records and everything, those judges sign off on it. Step 3 is then we have those bipartisan judges. They sit there and they go through and they basically vote 25 ballots any way they want. They can mark them up, do whatever, and those go through the tabulation machine. We get a report from there, and then they hand count those ballots to make sure the hand count equals the tabulation machine. To me, the arguments that continually go around our community and throughout the state is, guys, go to a logic and accuracy test, watch this process, or, you know what, sign up, call my office, be an election judge, be part of it, because everyone that has thus far participated in the process, they walk out going, Steve, I was wrong. And so I invite everybody to come up, because we're going to be doing that test here early fall before we mail ballots out, because we're going to be mailing our overseas military the end of September. And then October, we're dropping everything for the November election. So things are picking up.
Well, and that's another thing, too, that you mentioned the other day is, so the overseas voters, how do they work with this ranked choice voting, where there may be another round that needs to happen for them to be, you can't get the ballots to them fast enough, so that means their vote doesn't count?
So what they're talking about, how you go about doing that, is allowing them to vote online and going through that process. But then again, that goes against the argument where folks are like, we don't want any of this quick, secrecy or hooked to the internet, just a number of different things. We did it when we were in grade school, running for president or vice president. I mean, I think I was treasurer because I told everybody I was going to put Coke machines in every corner of the school.
There you go.
It's the same campaign.
You got my vote. So is there any of the ballot initiatives you'd like to talk about in the few minutes we have left that might be coming up with respect to, you mentioned property taxes and things like that you might like to let some of our viewers know about?
Yeah, there's a lot coming down on property. And, again, I am saddened that our legislature hasn't tackled this. It seems like they keep kicking the can down the road once we repeal the Gallagher Amendment. And I understand that, because the disparity between the assessment rates for commercial vacant land and residential was huge. But with that being said, is once we repealed it, we opened Pandora's box and we allowed our state legislature to manipulate things. I have been a very strong proponent of, don't touch property values, don't touch assessment rates. If you're going to allow for a tax decrease, take it off the tax bill. And because also it's transparent, people would be able to see that on their tax bill, just like our Tabor refunds. But now we're hiding it, where we're reducing values or we're changing assessment rates and things like that. To me, what's concerning to me is there is initiative, and I know it's getting a lot of signatures, but it has yet to be turned in to the Secretary of State to see if it's got enough signatures to make it to the ballot, where it's restricting the value of properties going up by 2.5% per year. This is going to be a very positive thing to our normal homeowner, because we're just now coming off where some of our neighborhoods saw a 35% increase. Yeah. And when you say you're going to limit to 2.5%, I'm all in.
Right.
Plus, it's very easy to understand, not what we're doing today. But the concerns are how much of that revenue is going to limit the school districts, limit the, other, municipalities, things like that. So those are discussions I know some of those boards are having. But there's no doubt if this makes the ballot, there's going to be a lot of voters going, hey, I'm all in.
Well, because the language was crafted in such a way for that proposal, and every initiative has to get vetted through the title setting board, right? So it's not that it wasn't vetted accordingly. The proponents, came up with language that was simple, to the point, and does what they envisioned to do. Then the unintended consequences are a different story, right? And so, yeah, our industry has not officially taken, position on either one of those initiatives on the property property tax structure. But as consumers feel the pinch on those bills, it's inevitable, and they are pulling very high, both of the property tax initiatives. And so, again, it's the laws of unintended consequences. If it sounds good and people can grasp it, then, and if it passes, well, then our state government, our local governments, school districts, all the special districts that, partake of that apportionment of property taxation are going to have to figure out what to do should it get to that point.
They've addressed one area of concern and created a dozen other areas.
But that's exactly what the repeal of Gallagher did.
Absolutely. And I mean, it was just one of those things where, I went around the community, as you guys know, and tried to educate as many folks as possible, and talked about how the Gallagher Amendment and the Tabor Amendment were colliding with one another. But with that being said, is there are going to be definitely a lot of homeowners that are going to sit there and say, hey, this is something I can get on board with,
sure.
And just limit the amount of value that the assessor, values the property, where a max of over a 2-year reappraisal period where it goes up 5%. Very easy to understand things like that, but there's going to be unintended consequences that are going to come down. But if we take anything positive away from this, is what happened is the legislature basically kicked the can down the road. Tax bills came out after, a record 2023 reappraisal year, and the citizens said, enough, we're going to go out there and we're going to get the signatures and we're going to put this on the ballot. So this is a reflection on our state legislature not doing what they should have done.
And then also playing hocus pocus, with the special session and going against the will of the voters, So this is where politics is so critical and so central to everything that people do, but yet it's so distasteful that then folks reject wanting to pay attention to it. They're like, it doesn't bother me. I don't care. I'm not going to pay attention to it. But it does bother you directly. I mean, it's going to have an effect on your personal well-being. So I guess it's incumbent upon our citizenry to pay attention to the things that are happening, as opposed to being apathetic about it. But, we can't force people to want to pay attention. But this is where we are today.
As your former county assessor, you guys supported me, assisted me, and it was amazing, what the PPAR did for me, and also my office when I was county assessor. And you guys had my back the entire 8 years I served as assessor, trying to get the senior homestead exemption increased, and also, also making it portable.
Right.
But if you notice, and piggybacking off what you said, here's the political thing, is all 8 years I tried to pass that bill, it died along party line votes. Completely died, and I could not get another major party to sign on to that. So every year it died along party line votes. However, when Prop HH was proposed, they tied the senior homestead exemption. So the bill that we tried to pass for 8 years, they took the exact language that we were, trying to do, and they had tied it to Prop HH, saying, if you vote for Prop HH, we will increase the senior homestead exemption and we will make it portable. And I am really glad that our senior citizens in the community figured it out, that this was a bait switch.
Right.
Yeah, it was a bait switch.
And everything in the public policy process has turned into a bait and switch.
Yep.
So, we reap what we sow, and we'll see what November plays out for us.
But if you guys need me in November, I'll be under the desk in a fetal position.
Exactly. You'll be hiding out. You'll be hiding out. Is there anything else you want to talk about on this session?
I mean, I think that maybe at some point we ought to take Steve up on his offer and And our group has often gone to the clerk's office to partake of the observer's process, which is very educational. And I mean, I love being able to walk into that office and see the windows, and you can actually watch the ballot, the life of the ballot.
The life of the ballot.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I think
and-
it's,
yeah.
I mean, if other citizens, obviously, and other members are interested in that, contact the clerk's office. I think it's a great opportunity to be able to show up to the clerk's office and witness how the ballot really does make its way from you dropping it to how it's processed. And I mean, it'll appease a lot of worries, and this is why pay attention to this ranked choice voting. You might have a personal opinion and you might like it, but do your research. Just listen to what we're telling you. I'm very passionate about the electoral experience and the integrity of the electoral process, and I'm very concerned about it. So I'm just sharing my personal opinion on it, but I would encourage people to do the research and look at all critical thought processes behind it, not just, oh, so and such that I like is supporting this, therefore it must be good.
Yeah.
The question I ask myself, and I hope everybody who listens to this does the same thing: why have the states and municipalities 85% have repealed it?
Exactly.
So there is something there, and I did a lot of research on it, and there's a lot of data out there to support don't do this.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. Follow the money.
Yeah.
Always follow the money. Well, I think that's it for our Policy Pulse podcast for this month. I want a special thanks to Steve Schleiker from
Absolutely.
the Paso County Clerk and Recorders for joining us and sharing information. And thanks to you, Doc, for being here and sharing your info. And we look forward to seeing you all next month.